The structures that passes through getting to the left ventricle, something like that. All right, so you need to know the flow of blood. So I'll do the whole flow of blood after I go through some of this. Skip on the sheep heart for now. Skip that and go down to on the heart models. So on the heart models, this is the big Cadillac heart model. Right. So I'll use this for a lot of the things. And we call it the non-Jake Saunders model. All right, or I'll just say Cadillac. That's the Cadillac heart model. This is one of your typical heart models right here. All right, so the first thing, the pericardium. Well, I'm going to have to find a model that has the pericardium. Because I don't have the pericardium on here. The myocardium is simply the muscle. The myocardium is the muscle. All right. The endocardium is what lines these ventricles. So you can see the endocardium on the inside. So the way I usually word that is I say name that lining. That's how I say it. Because, I mean, if I just say name that, you might think I'm talking about the right ventricle or something. So I'll say name that lining. Name the lining of this ventricle. That's the endocardium. All right? On the Cadillac, you can see that the endocardium is a different color than the myocardium. It's kind of nice. But still, to be clear, because if I put a sticker here and then say name that structure, you guys might think I'm talking about the ventricle, right? But I'll say name that lining. You guys will say endocardium. So I still owe you the pericardium. All right, let's do the chambers. This is the right atrium, and this is the left atrium. It's how it exists in your body, not how you're looking at it. So this is right atrium. This is the right atrium right here. From the right atrium, my blood flows into the right ventricle. And this is the right ventricle. This is the right ventricle. It flows through a valve right here. I'll leave it on the stand so you can video it. It flows through this valve right here. And this valve is called the tricuspid valve. It's also known as the right atrioventricular valve. Between the atrium and ventricle, atrioventricular, on the right-hand side, right AV valve, right atrioventricular valve. Now here's what you guys are going to ask me. Can I say, meaning you, right AV valve? Yes. You could say right AV valve. Okay? So right atrium, right atrioventricular valve, also called the tricuspid, right ventricle. Next. The pulmonary semilunar valve. From the right ventricle pumps blood up into here, right into this pulmonary trunk. And this is the pulmonary semilunar, this blue number 36 right here. This blue number 36 where my pinky is right there. That's the pulmonary semilunar valve. And I don't know what you want to call this regular heart model, but if you want to write number 36 for pulmonary semilunar. And on the Cadillac, it's number 101, 102, and 103. On the Cadillac, it's 101, 102, and 103. Each one of these leaflets looks like a half moon. That's why they call it semilunar. There's 3 leaflets, but they look like half moons. So this is the pulmonary semilunar valve. You have to say pulmonary because there's an aortic semilunar valve. So you must say pulmonary semilunar. Okay. Pulmonary semilunar valve. Pulmonary trunk. This is the pulmonary trunk right here. And it bifurcates into my 2 pulmonary arteries. So this is the pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk on the regular heart model is 7. The pulmonary trunk on my Cadillac is 6. All right? Pulmonary trunk. From the pulmonary trunk, my pulmonary trunk bifurcates into 2 arteries. By the way, when you say artery, and you can use this abbreviation, when you say artery, you can say artery. When you say vein, you can say vein. When you say arteries, that's how we make it plural in Latin. 2 A's. When you say veins, that's why I did that on the list. So my pulmonary trunk bifurcates into two pulmonary arteries. The two pulmonary arteries, is that an L? Is that 81 or 8L?
Looks like 8L.
So, 8 left. 8L stands for 8 left. That's the first time I learned that. And then the other one should be 8R. It's right here, but I don't see an...
It's marked up there.
Oh, it's marked up here. It's going underneath the aortic arch, and it's 8R. And that's the right pulmonary artery. So I have my right and left pulmonary arteries. On here, I see my left pulmonary artery, and I can open it up and see my right pulmonary artery. It's right there. So let me give you numbers. My right pulmonary artery, for lack of a better place for it, is 12, right there. I'm sorry, that's my left. My left pulmonary artery is 12. My right pulmonary artery is 40. What number is that?
9.
49. That's on the Cadillac. All right. Pulmonary trunk, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, left atrium. Now I'm in my lungs. All right. Now the blood's going to come back to my heart. I don't know. I thought I put these in order of blood flow, but oh no, I have pulmonary veins. It is order of blood flow.
Is this one the right?
That's the right.
It's coming through all the way.
Yep. So now I have pulmonary veins. The pulmonary veins are coming back into this left atrium. And inside the left atrium, you can actually see where the pulmonary veins come in. Right here and way down in there. Can you see way down in there, those red dots?
Mm-hmm.
So my left pulmonary veins are 11L, and my right pulmonary veins are 11R. You're going to say my pulmonary arteries are blue, my pulmonary veins are red. Yes. That's the exception to that rule. If you guys listen to my lectures, I made a big deal about that rule. If you haven't listened to it, I'll tell you the rule in a second. So these are the right pulmonary veins. These are the left pulmonary veins. And that's 11L for left and 11R for right. These pulmonary veins bring the blood back into the left atrium. So this is the left atrium right here. From the left atrium, the blood is pumped through my bicuspid valve or my left atrioventricular valve, also known as my left AV valve, also known as my mitral valve. The left AV valve has lots of names. Left AV valve, left atrioventricular valve, bicuspid valve, mitral valve. If you've heard of a mitral valve prolapse, that's a prolapse of that valve right there. So this is the bicuspid or mitral valve right here. Now the blood's in my left ventricle. This is the left ventricle. Then it pumps from the left ventricle up into the aortic semilunar valve. That's way up in here. You have to look way up there. I'll move my finger, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
See that up in there?
Yep.
That's my aortic semilunar valve. Kendall, can you see a number?
39.
39 on the regular heart model. On the Cadillac, it's 104, 105, and 106. Because it labels all the leaflets of the aortic semilunar. So there's 3 leaflets on there way up in here. There's 3 leaflets on it, 104, 105, 106. Right? So that's the aortic semilunar valve. Then I'm in this aorta right here. Let me close up my ventricles and close up my chambers. I'm sorry, this is the aorta right here. This is the big aortic arch. The aorta is number 13. By the way, that's called the ascending aorta. Then I have number 14 is the aortic arch. And then back here, number 19 is the descending aorta. And by the way, the descending aorta, next week you're going to learn it has other names because we name it by the area in which it's descending. So it's called the thoracic aorta as it descends through our thoracic cavity. It's called the abdominal aorta as it descends through our abdomen. And then it bifurcates into the iliac arteries. But so here's my aortic arch, my aortic arch, and descending aorta. So ascending aorta, aortic arch, descending aorta. Questions about the aorta? Okay. Oh, yeah. Ascending aorta on the regular heart is 13. Aortic arch on the regular heart is 14. Descending aorta on the regular heart is 19. Let me give you Cadillac. Ready for Cadillac numbers? I don't know, 5, I guess.
Yeah.
Ascending aorta on the Cadillac is 5. The arch on the Cadillac is unnumbered.
Would it be the 42?
I think they're pointing to the plexus, cardiac
Okay.
plexus. It could be 42. I kind of think they're pointing. Oh yeah, it probably is 42. They're not pointing to the plexus. They're pointing to the arch.
The
It's
arch.
42. Yeah. It looks like they're pointing to the nerve plexus called the cardiac plexus, but probably not. So 42 on the Cadillac is the aortic arch, and then the descending aorta on the Cadillac is unnumbered. There's not a good number on it. It's just descends right there. All right. So moving on. Now, this is a little bit confusing. Not the very first artery. Guess what the very first artery off the aorta is? My coronary arteries, but we're skipping them for now. This artery right here off my aorta is called the brachiocephalic trunk. Here's the problem. My heart is tilted to the left, and my subclavian arteries have to come off this aortic arch. But it's too far to the left for the right subclavian artery to directly come off the aorta. It's too far to the left. Therefore, I have a little segment of artery that connects my aortic arch to my subclavian artery. It's called this artery right here, the brachiocephalic artery. This is the brachiocephalic artery. All right? Then coming off my brachiocephalic artery will be my common carotid and my subclavian. Because this brachiocephalic artery gets me back over to the right. It gets me back over here. And then my common carotid and my subclavian can come off of that. But directly coming off my aortic arch on the left side, because it's already tilted to the left, is my common carotid artery right here, and my left common carotid right here, and my left subclavian right here. So my left common carotid is 16 and my left subclavian is 17. Now that's better seen on the Cadillac. Look at this Cadillac. Okay, here's the aortic arch right here. Here's the aortic arch. Now, let me show you the end game. Here's my left common carotid. Here's my left subclavian. Here and here. If you look at these and trace them, they both directly came off the aortic arch right there. Directly. This subclavian came off the aortic arch right there. And this left common carotid came off the aortic arch right here. So left common carotid, left subclavian. But here's my right common carotid and here's my right subclavian. If you trace them, they didn't come off the arch directly. They came off this brachiocephalic. So this is the brachiocephalic artery, this is the right common carotid, and this is the right subclavian. They don't come off the arch directly if you trace it back. They came off the brachiocephalic. So, numbers. The brachiocephalic artery on the Cadillac is 9. Brachiocephalic artery is 9. Right common carotid is 10. Right subclavian is 11. That's cool. 9, 10, 11. Brachiocephalic is 9. Right common carotid is 10. And right subclavian is 11. By the way, am I doing words that aren't on your list? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't have.
Sorry. That's next week. Okay, but you had to know brachiocephalic, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the left, but not the right.
Okay. Okay, so you guys good with that then? I'm gonna get back to the list. I got way out of hand there. Left common carotid, left subclavian. How come I see it on my list?
Common carotid is
The left is, but not the right.
Oh, because I do that next week. Oh, where I say brachiocephalic trunk, it's the same thing as the brachiocephalic artery. Same thing. Okay? All right, now let's go down to the right coronary artery. The reason why the right common carotids and right subclavians are not on this list because they didn't come off the aorta directly. So we'll cover them next week. Now, the first two arteries to leave my aorta, right here and right here, and right here and right here, here and here, are my coronary arteries. The very first two arteries to leave my aorta are my coronary. So I feed my heart first. That's what I do. I feed my heart first. This is the left coronary artery. This is the right coronary artery. The left coronary artery is 24L. The right coronary artery is 24R. I wonder how come I didn't notice that last semester. I didn't notice that there was L's and R's for right and left. So 24L is left coronary artery, 24R is right coronary artery. Then they circumflex. That means they travel around the heart. So I'm going to turn the heart so Kendall can see this. Look at this. This turns around. Goes around. Goes around. Goes around. Goes around. Runs right back into itself. See? See how they circumflex? So in other words, from the right coronary artery, you can get to the left. And from the left, you can get to the right. It's called an anastomosis. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that we have these anastomoses in the heart. It actually makes it harder to have a heart attack. You're going to say, there's tons of heart attacks. Leading cause of death in the U.S., you're right. But it's harder to have a heart attack because we have these anastomoses. We would have far more heart attacks if we didn't have these. So that circumflex, it's actually called the circumflex artery, by the way. I don't know if that's on your list. All right. So that's the right coronary and left coronary. On the Cadillac, the numbers for the coronary arteries are 28 for the left coronary artery. 28 right there. See how the arrow's pointing to it?
Mm-hmm.
28 for the left coronary artery and 23 for the right coronary artery. That 23 down in there. On the Cadillac, it's 28 and 23. All right, now, immediately after the left coronary artery comes off, it bifurcates into this circumflex artery and this big artery right down the center. This big artery right down the center is called the anterior interventricular artery. It's on the front, anterior. It's between both ventricles, interventricular. This is the anterior interventricular artery. On the regular heart model, the anterior interventricular artery doesn't have a number.
Is that it? No.
No, that's the coronary.
Yeah.
There's no number on it, but it's right here down the center. In between the two ventricles, anterior interventricular artery. On the Cadillac model, it looks like 30. It's this one right here. Right here. And it looks like 30 is pointing to it. Okay? Next artery is posterior interventricular. Here's how I do it. If you put your finger here and behind, when you turn this around, your thumb will be on the posterior interventricular. This one's directly behind, just the anterior. So this is the posterior interventricular. So just grab the heart like this, just like this. Middle finger's on the anterior interventricular artery. Your thumb should be close to the posterior. My thumb's on the posterior interventricular artery right there. No number again. That's posterior interventricular artery. So anterior interventricular, posterior interventricular. Okay? On the Cadillac, see if there's numbers on the Cadillac. 30 for anterior interventricular and 27? Mm-hmm. 27 for posterior interventricular. Posterior interventricular. Next. Okay, the small cardiac vein. Yes. Here's how you're going to find that small cardiac vein. Let me give you the other two first, because they're easier. This cardiac vein right here by the anterior interventricular artery is called the great cardiac vein. This is the great cardiac vein. It's right by the anterior interventricular. All right. The one back here by the posterior interventricular artery is called the middle cardiac vein. The middle cardiac vein. Now what you're going to say to me is that you're going to say, look, I have the great and I have the middle, but where's the small? Here's the small right here. You have a couple anterior veins, 1, 2, and then a small cardiac vein. Right there's the small cardiac vein. They're by these marginal arteries. Probably I didn't make you know the marginal arteries. I don't make you know the marginal arteries, but what you do is skip 1 or 2 veins and you'll have the small cardiac vein. Go to the right. So here's the great cardiac vein. Skip 1, maybe 2 depending on the model. But see, on this model I can't skip 2, can I? Because if I skip both of these, I'm on the middle. So in other words, if you go from the great to the right to the middle, pick the one closest to the middle, and that'll be the small cardiac vein. These are called anterior cardiac veins. That's what these are called. And I know that's on your list, but this is an anterior cardiac vein. This is a small cardiac vein. This is a middle cardiac vein. These are posterior cardiac veins is what they are. All right? So this is the small cardiac vein right there, and I got to tell you, different models show it differently. Your book shows you skipping 2 anterior cardiac veins. Your book shows 2. This model only shows 1. Say again, Dave.
Is this the small vein?
I have to come closer.
These would be the great ones. And you have the ones on the back.
And that's the middle.
This is me.
So that's the middle. So here's what you have. Great, anterior, small, middle, posteriors. I wonder what that's showing right there. What's your key say 47 is?
Right bronchus.
47, heart model. 27 will be the coronary sinus, but 47 I need to know.
Right bronchus.
That's not the right model. No, that's the Cadillac. I'm looking at the regular heart.
That one's not on here.
So know your Gepper heart model.
47.
It stops at 39.
Okay, so don't worry about what it is. 27 is the coronary sinus on the Denoyer Gepper. Now on the Cadillac, you do, doesn't even show it. You skip 2 anteriors and then it it's 33. Look on the Don Saunders whatever model. Tell me what 33 says. Probably says small cardiac vein.
Yeah.
Yes? See, that's exactly what you had to do is skip 2 veins. Here's the great cardiac vein. Skip 2. Here's the small cardiac vein. On this model, you only get to skip 1, unfortunately. Your book shows you skipping 2 like the Cadillac shows you skipping 2. Here's the great cardiac vein. Skip 1, skip 2. Here's the small cardiac vein. The next one's the middle cardiac vein. The next ones are the posteriors. So the Cadillac model shows it exactly how your book shows it. Clear? I know this model is lacking a little. Okay, so we're good with that. Next word is coronary sinus. This great cardiac vein right here, this great cardiac vein comes up, it follows the circumflex artery around, and then some other arteries join it, and it becomes dilated. It becomes fat. Where it becomes fat or dilated is called the coronary sinus. So the coronary sinus is number 26 on this model. Coronary sinus is 26 on regular model, and coronary sinus is 34 on the Cadillac. Coronary sinus is 34 on the Cadillac. You guys good? Here's something cool. Only 3 veins drain into the right atrium. The superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the coronary sinus. This coronary sinus has its own entrance into the right atrium. The other 2 entrances into the right atrium are the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava, the 2 largest veins in your body. So the right atrium has blood delivered to it by 3 openings. The opening of the coronary sinus, the opening of the inferior vena cava, and the opening of the superior vena cava. But the cool thing is, the heart drainage has its own entrance into the right atrium. Whereas the rest of your veins in your body have to drain into the vena cavas, and then they go into the right atrium. So that's kind of cool. Okay, the superior and inferior vena cava. On this model, by the way, if you open the right atrium, you can see 3 blue dots in there. The top blue dot up here is where the superior vena cava comes in. The bottom blue dot right here is where the inferior vena cava comes in. And the small blue dot right there is where the coronary sinus comes in. But I can see these vena cavas from the outside. Here's the superior vena cava, I can't see that number.
3.
Number 3. Superior vena cava is number 3. Here's the inferior vena cava, 5. Inferior vena cava,
It's okay, you don't need it.
5. So that's superior and inferior vena cava. All right. Okay, the interventricular septum. As you can imagine, it's the septum between the ventricles. So you're going to say to me, Kiggins, if you put a label there and say label the structure, name the structure labeled A, how do I know it's not myocardium? Well, that certainly is myocardium. How do I know it's not the interventricular septum? Well, that certainly is the interventricular septum. So you're going to say, how do I know you're not just trying to trick me to take points off? Because obviously I do that all the time. I will try to word this in such a way where I might say something like, name that layer, that would be myocardium, or name that. I might actually say, name the septum. If it's the septum, that's the interventricular septum. It's the septum between the ventricles. All right? So I'll try to word it such that you can get that. Now, these valves don't turn inside out normally. So these valves are like this. They open and they close. They open and they close. They don't go like this. They don't go. If they do that, you're in trouble. That's a prolapse. So what happens is when they open like this, blood goes from the atrium into the ventricles. When the ventricles contract, these valves close. They don't allow blood to come back up above the valves. So you don't pump blood from the ventricles to the atria. They're not allowed. The blood's not allowed to go from ventricles to atria. They're forced from atria to ventricles, and then forced from ventricles through the semilunar valves. Either the pulmonary if you're right ventricle, or aortic semilunar if you're left ventricle. Blood's not allowed to come back through here. Well, what keeps these valves from going like this? The answer is these heartstrings. When someone says they're pulling on my heartstrings, it really is an emotional statement, but heartstrings are called chordae tendineae. These chordae tendineae keeps these valves from prolapsing. The chordae tendineae here of the valves keeps the valves pulled down, and they won't allow the valve to turn inside out. Chordae tendineae, the heartstrings. You should write heartstrings right next to it. That obviously looks like a heartstring. Papillary muscle in there? Okay, good. Then, these heartstrings are actually connected to a oh, by the way, number for heartstrings. There's a number 35 in here pointing to them, so I would go with number 35. See how it's pointing to them? So number 35 is pointing to the chordae tendineae. But I got to tell you something. Number 35 itself is on the papillary muscle, but the arrow's pointing back to the chordae tendineae. And then you have these papillary muscles which the chordae tendineae hook to. And these papillary muscles can contract and tighten your valve up. That makes sense? These can contract and they can tighten up your heartstrings or loosen them if they relax. So it's not just a static chordae tendineae. They can actually be tightened or relaxed based on these papillary muscles right here. So you can adjust the tension of these valves with the papillary muscles. So the number for the papillary muscles, I don't really see a number. I got to tell you, the 35 itself is on the papillary muscle, but the arrow's pointing back towards the chordae tendineae. Let me see on the Cadillac. On the Cadillac, the chordae tendineae don't really have a number, unless that's a number right there. I can't see. It used to be a number. What didn't it?
Maybe like 55 or something.
So maybe 55. Who has Don Saunders Jake open?
75.
Is that a 75 maybe?
Could be.
Maybe. The number's rubbed off. And I would say the papillary muscle on the Cadillac is 77.